Evening and welcome to the Cognitive Rampage. I'm your host, Adam Lowry. You see me all Sunday dressed down for tonight's game. It got really ugly. Yeah, not even worth watching anymore. My Giants, we got some rebuilding to do, Big Blue. But outside of that, yep, I'm keeping updated with the game too on the side. So couldn't be a real Giants fan if I didn't. But I appreciate you joining me tonight, especially with the game that's going on right now. Leo will be here in a minute, run a little late. The weather down here has got him behind a little bit in traffic. But a couple things coming. We'll have a new talk or a new event coming up pretty soon. I'll let you know when those dates are coming. I've gotten really busy on the individual side as well as on the mywindowOut.com development. We're about 2 weeks out from launching. So we're really in crunch time at My Window Out. Let's see. That's about it. I hope you've checked out the new site. The site's going to be changing all the time with new edits, new additions, new books. Definitely new motivational videos you'll see I have on there. I also have my own personal list of mentors on my site. So if you're interested in maybe finding some other virtual mentors out there that I watch or that I pay attention to, you can pick up on some of those people that I'll be adding to my list that you see on there. Let's see. Anyway, the site's definitely going to stay with some new things. I have a couple new ideas I'm going to be doing. I'll be shooting some live little mini rants or little mini rampages throughout the week that'll just show up randomly. Those will actually be posted to my YouTube account, which you'll find also on the website under my brief lessons that I talk about. Now, you can also follow me on Twitter. I have it pulled up here in front of me, so when Leo gets here and we start talking relationships or when I start talking Prop 2, don't worry, you got something to say, go ahead and tweet it and we'll add it to the conversation. But I wanted to try to answer a few questions about Prop 2 itself because I can tell you utterly disappointed that it did not pass. I'm sure many of you are. The fact we have to have 60% for an amendment, whatever. But I'm going to educate you a little bit on the business aspect of it, on how it works here in Florida, how they're organizing it to work, I should say. Nothing's set in stone, but I've heard a lot of people talking about, thinking they were going to open dispensaries or develop co-ops and get cards, etc. A lot of people talking about what they're seeing or parroting what they're seeing from Colorado, California, and such. But Florida is not following suit like that whatsoever, if you can imagine that. And definitely not anytime soon since that didn't pass. But I'll walk you through kind of the developments of what happened along the way. I'm going to be really kind of brief and kind of over the top about it, or quick about it, so I won't get too detailed. But so essentially, the idea came up first to make Charlotte's Web strain legal of marijuana, and that's one that's lacking the THC, etc. Well, the Republicans actually brought that to the vote to get that passed. Now, keep in mind, the idea was to hurry up and pass Charlotte's Web strain for cancer patients, for kids, so then come November 2nd, the Republicans could say, hey, we already legalized it, good for us, we already did that, so don't worry about coming out and vote to legalize it. So that's initially how Charlotte's Web really got on the ballot to get voted on early, but anyway, problem is when that became available, there weren't enough patients in the state of Florida to provide any profit for anyone. So nobody jumped on the chance. And so then they expanded who could use the Charlotte's Web strain to adults, cancer patients, etc. Basically widen the spectrum to where it made companies or businesses say, okay, we'll get involved now. Well, they did that. And then now the amendment or the bill that got put up was about to go to the floor and be voted on with Charlotte's Web. I had a lot of attachments in there about who could grow, who could do what. But a representative here in Lehigh Acres, Florida, a Republican representative, before the bill went to floor, thought he would attach something to it that limited who was allowed to grow marijuana in the state of Florida. It was already under nursery laws, etc., agriculture. But now he added this bill to it, and this bill happened to, or this amendment happened to say that in order to grow marijuana, you had to be able, you had, I think, believe it was 144,000 acres, or be able to grow 144,000 plants, etc. You had to be open and in business for 30 years, and a couple other stipulations, but essentially it dwindled down who could grow to a very, very few amount of people, possibly some people that may have also donated to his campaign, but whatever. So anyway, that changed a little bit before it went through, but they passed Charlotte's Web version that went through, but those laws stayed there about who could do it. So essentially that limited to maybe 14 or so places in the state of Florida that qualify to be growers of marijuana. Well, then the state says they're going to put out, I believe it was 7 licenses. Well, now out of these 14 places, only 7 people could get a license to grow it. Well, it turns out that now there's a whole bunch of other stipulations. Now that these 14 places that are fighting for some of those licenses, they have to add things like cash on hand. They have to have a certain board with MDs, etc., etc. So a development of small companies began to pop up with board members such as the state was requiring. So then these 14 companies were now bidding for these types of small companies to join them to hopefully get one of those few licenses that would be given out. So the way it would go down is not non-profit as it's structured out in California and so forth, to where we could develop a co-op to where, say, me, you, 3, 4, 5 people that qualified for the use of marijuana, medically speaking. We could then put together a co-op that would qualify me for 12 immature plants or 6 mature plants. We'd develop that co-op, and people could add to our co-op. They'd pay a fee, join our co-op, and then we could add more plants, etc. We could open up dispensaries, etc. And that's the nonprofit route. Well, it's harder to control supply that way, I believe Florida figured out. And so now it's all a corporate angle and not a nonprofit. So more than likely you'll be picking up marijuana not at dispensaries per se, but at your local pharmacy. If it does eventually go through, which hopes to God it does. And so that's kind of the back end business of how it happened, some political involvement of why it did or didn't happen or why it didn't go through. So for those of you that were planning on maybe getting in the business or being growers or developing co-ops, etc., not going to happen. Not here. So imagine that the Republican-ran state is corporation control supply because they know demand is there. But who knows what the future holds now. And remember, I'm not arguing when I say Republican, arguing for Democrat either. I don't have a label whatsoever, I think, for myself, but not knocking those that do, because if it fits you, then it fits you, and that's okay. But that's essentially where I was at, bringing you up to date with Prop 2. I had a couple exchanges on Facebook going on a little bit about, I think it was Brent Shiver, Johnny Hurst, a couple other people were talking with me, and we were just exchanging, really disbelief of how it couldn't pass, how it's looked at as a Schedule 1 drug, etc. But a good conversation with you guys going on back and forth. So, I don't consider marijuana a gateway drug whatsoever. I'll put someone smarter than me, Dr. Carl Hart, to back me up. So look at his recent tweet, if you will, kind of referencing that anyway. But most of his research and all what he does is dedicated to I even hate to use the word drugs because that's so wide, and he would knock me for that. But the social influences of medication and drugs, etc. I would essentially say that we can't live in a drug-free America because that would include your antibiotics, your medicines, etc. So the idea of the term drug itself is rather loose. It's like saying I like sports. Well, we got curling and we have rugby. So what's your angle? And some people, may define as the difference as being one is a medication and a medicine, etc., and one may be used for other purposes. But who's to say that, spiritually speaking, that something else that one may consider recreational may just be part of someone's life or daily balance or etc. But the freedom part of it is the toughest aspect for me that I face. about that. How someone else has the right to tell us or anyone else what you can put in your body that's a naturally occurring or naturally existing substance, whatever, is just an infringement upon freedom. I mean, Joe Rogan is one of the best voices that talks about this, so no need to reinvent the wheel in his arguments. But you can dive into his shows and learn some things about really hemp is what got outlawed. Hemp was putting a dent in the cotton market, and the rich cotton fat cats couldn't have that, and some other political moves, and then hemp is outlawed, and then marijuana winds up being outlawed because of it. But it's got a rough history. It really does, and I think it gets a bad rap based on say no campaigns, just say no campaigns, and war on God knows what campaign. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of things going on in the globe that are related to this, like in Spain, who decriminalized it, etc., then offers free help for it to use it. And I would think that, is it just because it's illegal? That's what's stopping a majority of people from using? I had a conversation with someone not long ago where we talked about that, where I said, look, by decriminalizing it, one, we empty our jails and lower taxpayer money and putting people in legal situations that last a lifetime for something like marijuana. Is staggering to me, but Dr. Carl Hart's research is even more important on that. But I mean, the injustices that go down based on these rules and these laws and regulations, according from back in the New York pat down laws, where they could just search you just by looking at you and wondering. I mean, where does the line get drawn between our freedom slowly disappearing and the choices that we have and safety or whatever guise or fear-mongering new laws put into place are there for reasons? So I think it's just important. I mean, we want to say that we're saving children from it. Some people argue that if it was legal it would be open, but I fear my child getting drunk more than I do smoking marijuana, and I fear my daughter really smoking cigarettes more than I do having that. There's even research back with Dr. Carl Hart proving it doesn't lower IQ and further. So we have to get past all that fear-mongering and propaganda that's been shoved down our throats for years that really scares people. And it's not to say that their fears aren't genuine in some places. There's not to say that certain people haven't gone from marijuana into harder drugs, but I would say that was venture to happen without marijuana's existence or not. But and there's people's lives that have been devastated by it, and I don't want to short run that. And perfect timing, because Leo's shown up, walking into a marijuana discussion with me, myself, and I.
Oh, okay, good.
I brought him up to date kind of on Prop 2. All the things I've told you about too. Politically, how it was, and I was just kind of talking about it. Our freedoms. When is it infringing on our right to be free and make choices as healthy individual free Americans, and more laws being passed down that essentially restrict the freedom? It's like, I posted on my Facebook a TED Talk with an attorney, Paul Howard, who talked about we have this infatuation with rules, so much to where the rules become more important than even morality itself. And he used an example of a young 10-year-old who had opened up a cupcake business and happened to be doing really well in the neighborhood. And they came and shut her down unless she was willing to either open up a store or build a new kitchen within the house to create this. And so where's the morality versus you didn't comply is his argument. It's comply or die, not rather what's your moral advantage here or what are you doing. I think banks even went that way. But I mean, and marijuana is just another one of those topics. When is it your freedom is infringed upon due to the view or perception of someone else's idea of safety?
Yeah, I mean, there's...
And welcome, by the way, man.
Yeah, so it's the rain, certainly. But, I mean, that's where you can't so much, if it's a law, then it's a law. I mean, you have to sort of understand that it's something that you can't necessarily... just out of your own opinions, change any particular law and decide not to respect it. But I think where people have a moral obligation is to allow themselves to become informed and actually educate themselves on the issues, not just listen to different pundits that would largely be perhaps facilitated by drugs and different types of people that are self-interest. But I mean, for anything to change in this country, it has to come from the ground up.
Sure. Yeah.
And if they're being complacent, if they're allowing the society and our culture and our politics to dictate our beliefs, then I think any country's in trouble. Because I mean, there's going to be propaganda put out on any issue, but if you don't take the time to see if that's true or not, and just go with a particular party line or whatever, and just, well, it's because the media says so. I mean, that's where people got in trouble, and it ended up in a lot of amazing outcomes that were all pretty much infamous as it relates to wars in different countries, and how much was based on fact and how much was based on self-interest. So if you have a strong feeling, then I think you have a moral obligation to find out the facts, and then that's where that grassroots movement then starts to change. I mean, everything works for the people,
Right.
and that's why we vote. But if we're not really utilizing our vote in an informed, educated way, then the outcomes are a consequence of our lack of willingness to research it.
Sure.
And for a lot of people,
Some people have just given up that idea that they can change anything, or come out. And you talk about the grassroots movement. You saw what was going on in Tokyo with the 500,000 or so. And for a brief time here, the Wall Street idea here, but you see those grassroots movements begin to start, and then they're quickly snuffed out over time to where people almost grow tired of it, and they go, stop complaining and cope.
well, but I mean, look at, I mean, we've had a lot of changes through grassroots movements. I mean,
Sure.
civil rights. You start
Oh,
looking at all
yeah.
these, women's rights to vote.
Yeah.
It all was. There was a lot of people that would have wanted to have that control, but I mean, even you're talking about this issue too. I mean, when did we ever think it even come this close to being passed? So, and the next time there's going to be more people, because a lot of times people feel, well, okay, there's a lot of people talking about it, it's probably going to go through or whatever.
Yeah.
And they didn't even bother voting, thinking,
Right, that 2%, what, 800,000?
yeah,
There are 800,000 of you in Florida that said fucking yes, but you sat on your ass and just were complacent.
right.
800,000 who you are.
It's all saying, if you don't put your 2 cents in, how do you expect change? So,
That's true.
and that's the
Kind of
point.
fucking same thing.
So I don't think it's so much an impossibility, because people in this country seem to get to a certain critical mass of bullshit,
Right.
and then it's like, okay, enough already.
I like the critical mass. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so true. I mean, that critical mass of bullshit does build to a point, and can cause change, and you see it slowly starting. Otherwise, it would have never been legalized to begin with, and it's starting, with Maine a long time ago. And a lot of people don't know about Maine, where it really started and came from. That was really the movement of it, and got a few friends in Maine too that may be watching. So appreciate you guys doing what you did.
Yeah. But it's happened. I mean, you're seeing states, Colorado, California. There's a lot of places that 10 years ago that would be thought of as possible.
Sure.
So when people start to see things for what they are, but if you don't like what's happening, you got to do something about it.
Yeah.
I mean, change is a result of something. It doesn't just happen. So if you don't like a situation and feel like, well, I'm just one person, well, chances are there's thousands of other people that think the same way you do.
Right.
And so if you start to organize those people, then the special interest groups really can't hold up against those.
Right.
And like
As
it or
long as
not-
public opinion sways it, special interest goes to public opinion.
Yeah.
As long as it's for them or tries to sway it. But
Well, and this issue too, a lot of it's going to be really, there's going to be a lot of resistance from, for instance, the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, think how
What-
much
maybe
money
you
they
just-
stand to lose
Oh my
if
God.
that goes through. And so they're going to pump
Agreed.
all kind of money into this to prevent it. And it's strictly being driven by the dollar. Now you have the other side that really wants this to happen because of the economic windfall of why they want it.
Mm.
And then you have other people that want it because of the medicinal value and how it benefits them.
Right.
So you have all these different people that have their own, ideas of of what they want for their reasons.
Right, right.
And most of the time, it's usually narcissistic or very self-interest. So you have to sort of pull the ones together that, I mean, yeah, okay, people want this because of the revenues. People want this to save money in prison costs, and so you have those people and the people that, no, this definitely is the only thing that seems to help my medical concerns. Mm-hmm. And there's those people. When they start merging together in a common purpose, mm-hmm. then change takes place.
And I wish I could, part of that revolution that I talk about when I'm speaking anytime, or doing groups or anything, is that little revolution of the pharmacology issue that I talk about a lot. It's funny, like you read my mind when you brought up there's some pharmaceutical companies that really don't want this to happen. No. And just that notion itself, that a company that powerful with that much money is that scared about something else coming loose. I thought it has no medicinal purpose or value. So if it doesn't, why do multi-billion-dollar powerful companies not want something to go through? If they know, or if it's true, that there's no medicinal purpose whatsoever at all, right. Hence federal government Schedule 1, mm-hmm. At all. I mean, that itself shows it. So, I mean, that revolution to start, there's no shortage of pill commercials on television at the right moments. I mean, these people do research into when depressed people watch TV and what depressed people watch on TV mm-hmm. in order to put this commercial in front of depressed people. Mm-hmm. I mean, that itself, I mean, that goes that far. So that revolution of mine is that wake up about prescription pills and chemical incarceration. It's pushed onto patients the minute they walk in the door, to treat another substance problem, right. Or even if it's a health-related concern. It's right to those ideas, almost as if we face the fact that the human is not willing to do any work outside of take this fucking pill. As if the doctors and treatment and practitioners have all just said, here, this is faster, this gets more patients, this makes more money. Hell, they're not going to work out and diet anyway. So just fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the path of least resistance. I mean, the shortest path.
Sure.
And what's in my best interest now, not long term.
Yeah.
So, but that's the way people tend to look at things. They're looking in the moment. But, and again, there are some truths to it. I mean, there are a lot of physicians that, for instance, in psychiatry, there is a potential where marijuana could trigger aspects of schizophrenia.
Sure.
And,
okay. Right.
But then consider the amount of schizophrenics in this country amount to about 1%.
And how many pills are being pumped down them already at risky costs?
And so you start to see then, well, that's true, but then again, would they have developed that anyway? Mm. And where are the studies on that? Or other medications, or alcohol, right. or anything that can alter your state of consciousness.
Well, I can give you the research on how many people have died from marijuana.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Fucking zero.
That's right.
I mean, enough said, when pills that come out, they know a certain amount of people are going to die. Mm-hmm. But it didn't reach a high enough number not to release the drug, and that they couldn't pay off the people when that death happens. Right. And they still allowed to release these drugs.
Well, I mean, of all drugs that we could have legalized, probably I think the most caustic to the human system is alcohol. I mean, there's no other drug that attacks every organ system than alcohol. It's poison to your body, but no one's bringing out all the statistics of how dangerous alcohol could be. No one's talking about making it illegal. Right. They never will. But
we tried, and it's like they just went, nope, too hard to do it.
Absolutely.
But that's that fight. We had that resistance enough to it.
Well, but if they're going to say that this is the negative downside of this drug, that's why we don't want it to be legalized. But what about the drugs that are already legalized? What's the medical downside? And if you're going to have that argument, you have to have it with
some of them make people kill themselves.
You
take the wrong antidepressant, you kill it. I mean,
no, I'm just talking just alcohol.
Oh, just alcohol.
Just take alcohol alone.
Yeah.
What are the negative aspects of alcohol on the body? On how much money does this country spend on alcohol-related issues? I mean, if they're going to criminalize something, then base it on how caustic it is to the human body, to our society, for the costs of the expenditures of our tax dollars, and then pair that up with another drug, and you decide then, why are we doing this? If it's for what they're saying, then all this, let's start shutting down the liquor stores because it's dangerous. But that's where you see it isn't about the medical aspect; it's about the financial aspect, and there's certain things that we don't see, but aspects like insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, the people who lobby the politicians in our country, that tend to expect a certain voting pattern as a result of that. That's what's controlling all aspects of government, and particularly as it relates to this. You have other people that they don't want to have anything that's presently illegal legalized because that shows they're soft on crime, and that's part of their political platform. So even though it may have nothing to do with it, if it appears to disingenuously have them have any kind of assertiveness against crime, then I'm for something that should be criminal. And if there's a perception that they're going to be soft on crime, then no.
Just another angle of why not to do it.
So there's so many areas. But if you go back to the people who really take the time to know the truth about things, that want change for the good, and start to write to their politicians, write to the people who can make some change. Most politicians you'll talk to, on any particular bill that comes through, they take maybe the 50 calls that came into their office. Are they pro or con? Because those are from their constituents.
Right.
If the majority of them are pro, they're pro. If the majority of them are con, they're con. Now, unfortunately, with our present polarity in our political system, a lot of times they're voting the party line because they're afraid not to.
Yeah.
Because if I vote my conscience and the party doesn't stand behind that perspective, then that party is going to work to make sure I don't get reelected. Either you follow our party line or we'll find someone else who will follow that party line. So that's the problem. But if enough people get behind it, and if they know they can get the support of the people, whether the party appreciates it or not, that's when they're going to have the courage of their convictions and do what they think is right for the good of their people, their constituents, as opposed to supporting a party platform that may be totally opposite of what their constituents can actually benefit from. That's where.
And when you spoke about being informed, and with all the social media links we have today, there's no reason other than pure laziness or possibly a group think or group cognitive dissonance where everyone just kind of goes, well, this has made so much noise, somebody else will write, somebody else will call, somebody else will go, and they just play that passive role.
Well, the people that bitch the most, if you look at the majority of people out there, very few vote. So they'll bitch about, their situation, but what are they really doing to change it?
Right.
Everything you do is a consequence of something.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to take the time to really go out there and try to be part of something that can facilitate a change for the better, then you're going to complain about changes that aren't taking place for the worse.
Sure. Well, you made a good leap.
That's the country.
Well, I wanted to, start to make that leap from, we're talking politics and change and groupthink, community, but you started to narrow that down to the individual, and where is this taking place in relationships? What influence is political thoughts, political influence, thoughts and decision playing in not only to relationships, but the growth of the individual, the desire of the individual, the motivation of the individual, or the decompression of. It's a two-part lengthy one. So, where's that start to draw a parallel for you?
Well, I just feel no matter what your situation is, if you let your voice be known, it's going to have a ripple effect. And if one person speaks up, then that sort of frees another one to step forward and say, yeah, I believe that too. And then it starts to spread exponentially. Rosa Parks, the fact that she wouldn't move out of that bus started a whole civil war,
and that's that individual taking a hold of that moment and growing it.
Right.
It's a stretch. I'm building a long bridge. So it's a stretch, Danny. And so I'm trying to take the stretch and kind of connect it. Is everything we've discussed here, from the marijuana to the votes to politics to involvement, activity, etc. Where is that playing in the individual psyche, development, quality of life, etc.? And how might that be impeding connections of relationships, connections of a social aspect? How much are people allowing what we've discussed, with the confusion, the propaganda, the pulls, the votes, whatever? I mean, it seems it could be rather constraining on the individual, but then mix a relationship involved when views begin to change and grow like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, particularly now as polarized as it's become,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a relationship where people have two different points of view, um, it's a big indicator of a negative outcome in that relationship.
True. Even a political setup.
Absolutely, because either you're saying I'm right and you're wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right.
And those are like absolutes.
And it becomes an intolerance if the other person can't respectfully understand the person has a right to their own opinion and can't even process it. I mean, if a person has a different opinion, that's an opportunity to understand why they think that. Because maybe I'm seeing it from my own perspective, but I haven't really considered it.
I love that. Hold on. One more time. Say it exactly how you just did.
I don't have a rewind button, but I mean, the idea
That
it's an opportunity to actually value the differences.
So when you're
when you're talking to that partner,
yeah,
and they have a different opinion, maybe that person's opinion is something I've never considered. I never looked at it from that perspective.
growth.
So I can actually learn something from that. If it makes me feel uncomfortable, well, let me find out why. Because if I get to the other side of that discomfort, I might find a perspective that I never even entertained. Now, I still may not agree with it, but now I understand where they're coming from. And so there's a mutual respect in having a difference of opinion, and maybe actually change would take place. If I see that your opinion is actually more valid than the perspective I was taking, then am I able to accept that change and support where you're coming from, even join you on that perspective? And I never would have done so had I not had a chance to process that. The trouble is people become very defensive. I mean, if you want to discuss any aspect of what their belief system is, then at that moment they feel under attack. And that's part of our culture, and that's part of our media and everything. You know, if a Democrat asks a question, well, you're actually attacking. You're trying to devalue our perspectives. No, I just want to know why you think that way. And so that groupthink of you better dig in on your position because someone's going to attack it, then starts to permeate all aspects of society, including your social and even your relationships at that point. But if two intelligent people can understand that they came to a conclusion based on knowledge that was given to them through all aspects of their life, and another person gained their opinion through their history, where they came from. I don't know that person's history, but maybe part of their history could educate me, and part of my history can educate them. And if you understand that, then you have a mutual respect and agree to disagree. Or in some ways you learn to love the differences, because those differences allow me to grow beyond where I'm fixated.
Yeah, that growth part, as you talked about, I can imagine someone in a relationship, two people, and one saying, this is my view, and the other one automatically not with that view, wanting. That's right there in that moment, that resistance, that wait. That's that resistance to change. Almost like we're growing, like the Hulk, like we almost have to go to get through that growth or that wall of that resistance to want to possibly maybe change or learn something from that side. And so people in relationships and in general tend to, when that they're devalued by someone challenging their opinion or of a different one, immediately build a wall of, no, this is my way, and art. But the way you talk about it, the strength that it needs to take to be able to absorb the shock of the difference of opinion and the instant feeling of being devalued, and then reframe that into a now opportunity to take the difference as a chance to grow and learn in your own belief.
Right. Yeah, or mutually can grow from that.
Hence why that humility stretch is so difficult to reach for people, because the insecurity is almost the filler to the concrete wall of change.
Well, the insecurity most people that are an absolute way of thinking tend to predicate their value on what they do more than who they are, what they believe more than who they are. So if you don't agree with me, you're devaluing me, that kind of thinking.
Right.
Most of the people that tend to then be resistant to discussion is because they got their opinion as a result of a codependency in the group that they support.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, they just believe in this because they're told to believe in this based on on that group that they're a part of. And so the reason they can't discuss it is because they don't know enough about it. Okay, so that's why it's like, well, you're wrong.
So the fear, and so again, we're talking that fear, that resistance to change, the fear, all is this metaphoric wall that we build up as resistance to the change.
And that resistance, it comes from a lack of competence. Okay, if I'm not competent to, they would say debate this with you, let alone discuss it. Okay, then
and check your dialogue, because that's the important part.
Right, and so then if I'm not willing to discuss this because you seem to know more about this than I do, so on the end of this discussion, I'm going to look like an idiot, then all I can say is, well, you're wrong, and I don't want to talk about it. Okay, because that's that self-preservation.
Right.
Okay, but if I don't know enough about it, then it doesn't mean I have to discuss it. I can just say, well, help me understand why you have your opinion. And maybe I'm going to learn, since I didn't know much in the first place, and I don't want to look stupid. So the best thing is say, well, what do you think about this?
Just freeze for a minute.
Just say, yeah, pause there. Let me tell me. And then it's sort of like, well, that sounds pretty reasonable, actually. And since I don't have any real basis for where I'm at in the first place, yeah, I can go with that.
Right. Then no argument.
No argument. It flows.
Good. That's a good approach.
And if you don't know, I mean, that adage I use all the time, that quote is, I mean, never pass up the opportunity to say nothing.
Right.
I mean, take the time to listen first, see what's happening, see where you're at on that issue. And then let's say you still don't want to agree with them because that's something you haven't evolved to that point where I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But
important that you haven't evolved to that point
right.
to be able to do that.
To feel competent to discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's sort of like, well, let me give it some thought, and I'll get back to you. That gives you the opportunity to actually find out something about it, and then talk about it later. Okay?
Right.
But instead of just shutting down, well, the person you like's an idiot. That's all I got to say. Without even knowing anything about the other person, other than they're on the other side of the fence. And so, but that's our culture. You have to respond now. You have to react now.
Magic pill.
Someone
links back to that same notion of give me the pill now to fix it now.
Well, but it goes back to what you're saying is, if I don't know anything about it, I don't really want to take the time to research it. Then basically, I'm just going to go along with what is. Mm-hmm. And because I'm misinformed, I'm uneducated on the issues, then complacency is actually a coping skill.
Right. Because
then I don't have to do anything. And yet I'm still accepted by a large group.
Hence the non-voters.
Yeah.
Man, all that comes back full circle.
Yeah.
You know, I could go deep in that communication about relationships. And I mean, I think the place to start for people is to really understand that a difference of opinion is really an opportunity. You know, it's a place to begin to focus.
Yeah,
instead of saying that a difference of opinion means, whoa, we have a problem here.
Yeah.
It should mean, wait, we have a difference of opinion. My chance to grow from you, your chance to grow from me. If two people, as you said, have evolved to be able to do something.
And more than that, why does it have to be a difference of opinion? I mean, we can also look for where are similar beliefs.
Sure.
Okay, it doesn't have to be differences. We're looking for similarities. Okay, let's talk about what's similar about this.
You know, why are we both upset?